Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think.
Because we're here with Cooper talking a little bit about Plague Marines, and really more interestingly, what it's like being an enfranchised player making it into Kill Team for the first time, because I assume you played 40K before this.
Yeah, I played quite a lot of 40K, but I never really got into Kill Team until like 6 months ago. But yeah, 40K was my jam for a few years before this.
What was it that brought you over?
There's so much list building and management within like playing the game of 40K that it becomes like almost punishing when you don't have the right things, or someone's just got a better list than you. Which is, I mean, list building is 50% of the game, but that, and then the random like secondary objectives, or like if you're playing Kill Team, it's like you would randomly draw attack ops instead of actively choosing them. And so it
back
kind
in
of
the
was
day,
like,
we did do that.
yeah, you usually actually just, yeah, it sucked. It sucked because it would be a feels bad, and you get two objectives and you'd be like, and I don't score for this turn because I got really bad objectives. So I like this Kill Team game because you have a lot more control over all of the aspects of the game, and you feel like it's a lot more consistent.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, it is definitely a game where the more you play and the more you think about it, the more angles you have that you actually can control. I think, when it comes to playing Warhammer 40K and other games with card decks, part of the skill is card counting, where you've seen something, so you start like screening stuff out of the decision tree. But none of that is particularly fun when the core reason why you're playing the game is to play with miniatures, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think that it can kind of be daunting to some like new players when they're getting into 40K, when you've got 6 different detachments in each army, and each detachment plays differently, and each army plays differently, and you've got like 30 units to choose from. So I always recommend like let's do Kill Team first, because you choose the guys you really like and think are cool, and it's super easy to kind of like start understanding their own mechanics and getting a lot more control, and a lot less like rules bloat than you would in 40K. So.
Is there a reason why you didn't pick something like Underworlds, for example, where there's a mixture of both card game and the minis? Or were you really interested? You just like 40K? Guns are easier to understand, and even though Underworlds is a little bit easier to play, not really what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I think Underworlds is for sure like a much easier game system to like latch onto. But I really like 40K, and I love its aesthetic. I love Space Marines. I love the universe it's surrounded by. And I think that Kill Team honestly has a lot more support in a lot of different ways. So it's a lot easier to just delve into the Kill Team and know that you've got a little bit more support than you would with Underworld. So if there's like an imbalanced team, they'll get tweaked later on in the year.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the benefits of the Kill Team update schedule. We're pretty regular over the last 2 years now. Every 3 months, you basically know that something is going to come down the line and tap probably the heaviest hitters. Teams generally don't get tapped right away, so you generally have to wait at least 3 months. So you can know that if you're building something, you'll get some play with the things that you think you're going to get some play with. And 40K, for all its faults and all the other stuff, it is the most popular, miniatures game. So you can probably find someone who will play Warhammer 40K with you, and Kill Team is, downstream of that, easier to find players than it would be for something like Underworlds.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I still love 40K. I think I'm just taking a very long break from the competitive aspect. It's a lot of time to paint and build the minis, and a lot of time to get these lists like perfectly smoothed out, and then go to tournaments with them. It's a lot easier to just grab 7 minis off a table and then paint them up and then slap them on back on the table and be like, this is my team. So we're gonna play with this.
Yeah.
You did Plague Marines at Adepticon, right?
Yeah, I brought the Plague Marines at Adepticon, my first kill team tournament. And so I did pretty well with them. I got like 6-1. And my first game was actually against Jason, ironically. So that was my one loss. It was a fun game though, Jason.
Yeah. You played it incredibly well. I was not at all surprised that you went on to get 6 wins after that, because you played a tight game. Like, you were asking all the right questions. I mean, that was it was like razor sharp, super close. Like, there was a bunch of different ways that it could have tied or that you could have won.
Yeah, I think if I had a lot more experience with the game, I think I might have been able to maybe catch a tie with you. One of those things was that I chose to like do secure. It was like not secure center. You take the take ground.
Yep.
And I didn't take a route that would allow me to have gotten another 2 points on that, and it was a 13-15 game.
Yeah.
So it totally could have swung either way. Just really dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, this is a fun segue for Jason to talk a little bit about what you were doing, because, Cooper, you were playing Plague Marines. You did pretty well this weekend. And Jason was out there skewing away, as anyone who listens to the podcast semi-regularly would know, or our Patreon listeners would know. Jason, you want to talk about your meta strategy that you brought to the tournament where you bumped into Cooper, but honestly didn't quite catch up to Cooper's record at the end, right?
Yeah, that's true. I played Legionary, and they were made out of World Eaters, the Khorne Berserker models, and I did all Mark of Khorne except for there's like a couple of matchups. I was like, okay, known matchups that I would switch is Plague Marines. So I actually did switch to all undivided for that game, just because more hits is better than more damage. For like, if you're making me hit on 4s, I want to be able to reroll a bunch. So pretty much it's just like it comes down to, for Plague Marines, we're both hitting on 4s, we're both ceaseless, but I'm going to have 5 attacks and I'm going to be fighting first. So hopefully that helps out, and then just like shoot a bunch and then be a nightmare to fight. Like Shrivetailing to fight first anyways when you get there, and have my own cases of damage reduction. And it was just like it's a very dicey way to play. So yeah, it's just like take a gamble and hope that that you make fewer blunders than your opponent.
Yeah, it was a very. Oh, yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a super dicey one. But yeah, and then pretty much for everything else, I went Mark of Khorne, and I think in the future I might do Undivided against Inquisition, but I have to think about that one more. Because then you just scream counterspell this, as you have no ploys to counterspell, and then you just ceaseless everything on 14 wound bodies, and you just chop everyone up.
That's a good little team right there, just chopping people up. We when we were playing, it was really, really like dicey and chancy. Like I think there was a point the last turn where you charged me and I had like 10 wounds left on one of my Plague Marine warrior, and you brought him down to 1, and so he fell back and just shot you in the face. But like there was also there was another point where he just like one shot one of my guys. It was super, super like swingy on those games.
Yeah, it was like the melt-a-gun just fully nuked someone with all 4 hits. And I was setting up all these traps that I thought you were gonna fall for. Because I don't know, a lot of people fall for these traps. The Shrivetailing, running up, shooting a bunch of times, and then getting people tied up in melee. So I was assuming that you would fight him back and just try to bludgeon through it, but instead you were like throwing crack grenades and then poisoning him, and then using the do damage to poison models, and then whipping the flail to poison him and do more damage, and just like that's like the perfect way to solve the Shrivetailing. And you just like you skipped past any of the traps and we're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna mortal wounds that guy to death. I didn't
even know there was a trap there until like I saw it, and I was like, what does he do? And you were like, well, doesn't the Shrivetailing like always fight first, right?
He always fights first. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what does he do? And you're like, he always fights first. I'm like, I'm not fighting him. That's a trap. and I threw the flail right by the wall, and then just flailed you and threw a crack grenade at his face, and then and popped him. But yeah, like there was one of your guys ran into my back line and slaughtered the flail guy, and then there was another guy that ran in and killed my heavy gunner as well. Which, speaking of, I do not like the icon bearer in the Plague Marine kill team. I think that the heavy gunner is so much better, and there's so many reasons why. But yeah, I think the icon doesn't live up to what it used to be.
You want to dig into that a little more?
Okay, here I can give you my hot take real quick. Okay, so in Volcus and in Gallowdark, which were the maps we played on, when you're either in a stronghold in Volcus or in Gallowdark when you're just in the map, you get lethal fives on Torrent and Blast. And in Volcus it's in the strongholds. And I think that's like so much more useful to have like a flamer with lethal fives shooting at people, or just, using him to kind of bait people up the board rather than an icon. I also like to play a lot more shooty than most people with Death Guard. Like, I know that a lot of people like to like run up the board and pressure, or like sit there in the middle and chill out. But I really like to take advantage of the poison bolters and making sure I can get as much damage squeezed out of my guys as possible. So I really like having the torrent guy. And there was a few instances where I really needed him in Gallowdark, and I had him like overwatching a room, or sorry, guarding a room on an objective, and nobody could enter because they just get flamed to death. So I just really like him for utility.
He is one of the only 5 attack flamers in the game, and 5 attacks on 2 is pretty good, especially if you've got the thing that gives you ceaseless going on. That's very reliable 5 hits.
Yeah, it's a bit wild, and it is also severe and saturate. So severe is also one of those things. It's kind of a crutch, but it's used to basically guarantee you're getting poison in. But yeah, I was like, I went against a bunch of your friends, Jason. But
You did. You ran
I
the
went.
gauntlet.
I ran the gauntlet. I went against Jason, and then I went against Lee, and then I went against someone else. I think it was
All
Pierce.
parts of the Minnesota crew. One
Yeah,
funny thing about the Plague Marine Heavy Gunner, he actually cannot shoot twice, if I remember correctly, because he doesn't have a bolt weapon at all, right? Did you ever find
yeah.
that an issue?
No, I just fight. Well, I just would. So in Gallowdark, I just guard, and then in Volcus, which I played 3 games with, I just use him as bait, or I'd run into melee and tie like a key piece up, and just like hope to God that guy didn't win that fight. Because I try to play with like 5 Marines and hope I win with 5 Marines, and then the 6th Marine, which is the gunner, is a threat piece that kind of walks up the side of a board and goes, "You kill me, that's great, but you waste resources into killing me. If you don't kill me, I go and flame someone and blow up your Space Marine or like 2 guardsmen." And so it's kind of a like a pressure piece that I can really easily use in conjunction with all the other guys.
Yeah, it's a lot more reliable damage output than a bolt pistol, even with the bolt pistol shooting twice. And then he still has 4 attacks on 3, 3, 4 in melee, which is not terrible. And he does have the potential to fight twice if you're fighting like goobers that you can absolutely just like punk in melee.
Yeah. And if you're getting charged and you have Lumbering Death on, he gets ceaseless. So he can do some work. I had him charge in the last game I played, which was the final game. I played it into a Tempestus Aquilons, and I charged into a Aquilon, punched him to death in melee, and then I shot one to death, like the Melta-Gunner to death. So he does work. It's just you have to find use for him, because I think the icon bearer is really easy to take, because you're like, oh my gosh, look, it's the free stratagem. Just pop contagion when you need it. I usually never play any stratagem strategic plays ever on turn 1, because I just like farm that CP for the extra turn of contagion. Otherwise I would be, if his icon was still on the kill zone floor, I'd be taking him every game.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting take. I think just the fact that you've lost that positional reliability because now you're going to be in your opponent's side, which as a Plague Marine player who went through Adepticon, I'm sure you've realized that getting to your opponent's side is no easy feat with 5 inches of movement.
No, not in Gallo Dark at least. Like people will abuse Razor Wire against Plague Marines, and it's like basically like, oh no, I can't move. Okay, so I can't move out of the room, and I'm stuck. Might as well guard with the Torrent Flamer instead of just sitting here with an icon.
Yeah, I do think that's like an interesting little adaptation. And going 6-1 at Adepticon, I guess that insight actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, I think there's a few combos to be had with some Plague Marine stuff. One of them, I think a lot of people overlook the Virulent Poison strat. Maybe it's just me and I like gambling, but I really like rolling a 7-up and burning a CP. And if I don't roll the 7-up, you're not poisoned. The stratagem's like if you can either choose someone within 3 or someone within 7. And if it's within 7, you roll 2 dice, and on a 7-up, they're poisoned. But you still have to burn the CP to do it. And I always win the roll. So I just always do the 7-inch. And then usually that's my last activation. And then when the next turn starts, I'll use Nurgling, since they're within 7 inches of the guy that I just did the poison to, and then subtract 1 from his APL.
Yeah. That's big. I mean, it's 2 command points, but then they're poisoned and -1 APL, which is like kind of wild.
Have you considered the stun grenades?
Yeah, but that's not fun. I also like bringing Plague Vents, Poison Bolts, and then the Plague Bells. I always bring those, and in Gallo Dark I always bring Light Barricades and Heavy Barricades equipped Scouting Ploy. Or Scouting. So I'm not really like good on options because you need the Plague Bells for no injure because it's so good. Then you need the Plague Bolts for 2 of your Grenadier and your Plague Marine Warrior, mainly your Warrior, to get poison and severe and bolt weapons. And then you really need the Poison Vents in the fringe cases where it's like, oh, I really needed D3 damage within 3 with poison.
Yeah, and especially if you're going to be taking the time to go Virulent Poison, which is pick a target, within 3 or pick a target within 7 and gamble to get a poison token. It just means that you have extra chip damage at your opponent. They go in thinking like, oh, I can handle this, and then suddenly they have poison and everything is a disaster for them.
If I'm correct, that is it does not require line of sight, right?
It does not. I think it is just within 3. The cloud of flies and sickening diseases goes through walls, much like COVID.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I remember doing that to someone a few games ago, like not in Adepticon. I was like right behind a building and they were like, oh, I'm safe because I'm concealed. And I just chose him and then I Nurglinged him and he was like, aw. It sucks because it's like 2 APL models, especially like you really need it when you're playing Aquilons or when you're playing like Legionaries and or even like Chaos Cults, when you really need that charge and double fight against a Plague Marine operative who can maybe tank it, and you just lose that.
Yeah, I think Jason did something similar by switching one of his warriors to a Slaanesh mark somewhere in one of his games to drop a minus APL. So like having these Space Marine teams where your opponents are depending on some of their operatives to overperform means that if you can throw an APL out at the wrong time, Jason's done a lot of this with Phobos and multiple stun grenades. You move up in conceal, and then when you're counteracting, you just chuck stun grenades at people. Kind of sounds like you're doing something similar, which is why I asked about the stun grenades, because it feels like a single smoke might be useful for plagues as you move up the board on turn 1, and then if you have the stun grenade, now you've got turn 2. If your opponent tries to counter stage, you can Nurgling someone to -1 APL within 7 if they're poisoned, and then you can stun grenade someone, and then suddenly your opponent's first couple troops are now trapped.
It's not a bad idea. I might actually do that.
Yeah, the counteract stun grenade is huge because you can do it from conceal, and like with the Astartes keyword, you can still counteract from conceal, and then like they don't need to be a valid target. You can just like, while I'm on conceal and you're on conceal visible within 6 inches, you can counteract and throw a stun grenade at them, and it's big.
Wait, can you shoot counteract on conceal?
Not a shoot.
You
It's a
can't,
special
but it
action.
is,
You
yeah, it's a
can do
special action,
anything.
so it's not a shooting attack. So you can just like throw stun
Oh,
grenades on
that's so
counteract,
cheeky.
and it is very cheeky. Yeah,
Yeah, that's cheeky, dude. Just like, oh, sorry, you thought you got to move up the board and fight? Nope.
not today,
Uh,
buddy.
yeah, especially so. Yeah, this is where the heavy gunner comes in. You run dash him up with contagion, and you have that guy poison, and now he's -2 to move and -1 EPL. Just absolutely troll someone.
Yeah,
I mean, why else would you be sending Nurglings out if not to troll your opponent? And the team is just covered in Nurglings all over the models.
Yeah, every single model has a Nurgling on it, except for the Playcaster. No, maybe. I think the Playcaster is flies instead. One of the things I noticed with Cloud of Flies is it doesn't say kill zone floor. So you can put it on any floor of any building. And so I've done this a couple times where I've kind of like moved my guys onto a second floor and then Cloud of Flies. And just kind of sat there with engage and hope someone shot me so I could just tank all the damage and shoot them back.
Yeah, bait. I love bait. I'm a big bait player, so when the edition first dropped, we had Kennual Crit on here a while back, and we were talking about the Shade Wall, where you have the Vespid who ignores piercing, it has a 3-up save, so it goes to a 2-up save. For the brief period of time when we were arguing whether or not we could drag a portable barricade up on top of a second floor, you couldn't. You can't now, for sure. But it was kind of funny. And now the Sanctifiers also have a similar kind of bait with a 3-up save model that can go to a 2-up save on a portable barricade. So being able to have an asymmetric Cloud of Flies smoke bubble, which is what the Plague Marines have, and sitting on top of a second story with actual cover means that you get basically a version of the inside-outside rule that was just recently removed. So you can have cover and obscurity sitting in a bubble, and your bolt gun warrior can be on top, just blasting away happily.
Yeah, the
Because
Plague Gun Warrior is so good.
yeah, because if you're standing on top of something and it's a 3-inch bubble, for your opponent to break the Cloud of Flies, they have to be on top of the building.
Yeah, because that was like one of the first things I noticed. Because when I started playing with Plague Marines, which was my first team, I briefly played Nemesis Claw for like 2 games and I didn't like them. But I played Plague Marines and I was like, okay, all this terrain says kill zone floor. So what if I just put the Cloud of Flies on the second floor? And I did. And then I realized, well, if you get up here, you're right by my Plague Marines, which is fine with me. If you're not, you're going to be obscured shooting me. Great.
Yeah, I think the real downside to doing something like that is you need to make sure that the other 5 Space Marines are all doing their job, fighting over terrain, and making sure that you're scoring points. Because you've effectively dedicated a model to not interacting with some of the objectives as he doinks away at people in perfect conceal cover, which is probably really, really annoying. Because for anyone who doesn't know, Plague Marines are very hard to kill out of the gate because any damage can be cut by 1 on a roll of 50-50 from their Disgusting Resilient. And if you have cover and you have obscurity, you are -1 total hit. It means you're already subtracting 4 to 3 damage off of most people's expected damage output, and then you cut another 3 for the 3 hits that theoretically go through if everything else goes poorly, but you also get a free save, so you're like taking 2 hits out of people's 4 on a perfect day, and most of the time they're going to land 1 hit and it's going to be cut by a third, and you're going to take 2 damage, and then he just double taps you and kills you.
Yeah, and if it's the warrior, he's got a 5-up crit save, so even if you don't have obscured and you're in cover, he's still really good at just not taking the damage. But yeah, one of the problems I find with Plague Marines is staging is really hard to do with them. Because like there's points where it's just like you're not fast enough to react to a counterattack he knows that's gonna happen. To kind of try to salvage whatever you got. Aquilons, once again, they got my butt when my first turn, they shot down a Melt-A-Gunner and blew up my play champion on turn 1. Because I thought I'd be safe behind a portable terrain feature. I think you saw actually.
I did pass by this, so I saw.
Yeah, Travis, you passed by that because I asked you, can I put this down here? And you're like, yep. I was like, that's awesome. And so I think he passed by again. And he's like, yep, that's 18 damage to the champion. I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah, I walked by and you put a portable barricade inside of the big stronghold, and we were talking about whether or not you could fit in it. We eventually got it to fit, and then I left, and I was in my head, I was like, I wonder if that's a good idea, but whatever. It's not my game. Also, as a tournament organizer at that time, it also doesn't really matter what I think because I'm not going to give people advice in the middle of their games. So I just like saw it, walked away, came back, and then saw the dice roll. Like, ooh, that's rough.
Thankfully, yeah, he overplayed because he played his gunner. Both of his special gunners went on that building in full engage, and then shot them, which kind of let me just get my Plague Marine warrior to go upstairs and then just shoot both of them to death in the same turn. Um, so he kind of, it was kind of a trade of, and I'd rather actually just trade my leader for two special gunners, like a plasma gunner and a Melta, because those guys are much more dangerous than his entire team.
This is exactly how Jason has been playing Space Marines for the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like dangle the thing that your enemy wants the most, because it's like every single of the 6 Space Marines can just like murder everyone. So I'm like, take the marksman, whatever. And then if they do kill him, then you just like double kill their spooky stuff back. And then all of a sudden they've got a bunch of goobers that are running around with like regular las guns and fists, and they're just like bouncing off of Astartes that just pick them up and break them in half.
Yeah, like I had like rushed my brawler up the left side of his board on that map, and he deep striked a bunch of his guys, and they were trying to stop me, and he was holding this objective, and I just kind of like walked in the room and like flailed 3 of them. They all died in like 2 turns, because of poison. Like I flailed them all for like 4 damage, and then they all went to injured, and then they all took D3 extra damage, which is another really big thing. The fighter is, I honestly, this might be an over exaggeration. I think the Plague Marine fighter is the best fighter in the game due to his ticking time bomb ability of everybody within 2 inches invisible takes D3 plus 2 of damage, and if I roll a 3, you're poisoned as well.
Oh, it doesn't always poison them?
It does not always
No.
poison
That's
you.
why, yeah, there was a few times where I did it to you and I couldn't poison you. Actually, the one time I did it to your Shrive Talon, I did 5 damage though, so it didn't matter. But yeah, it's on a 3 on the D3 that you poison them.
Yeah, he's certainly one of the more powerful Space Marine specialists. He's definitely better than all the ones that hit on 4s because hitting on 3s is just better, especially because you're generally going to be ceaseless would be the idea. And generally with him, you're like going to move dash, do the swing, and then if they have to shoot you, which is fine, or they charge you and fight you, and then you have ceaseless, which is 5 on 3s, 4/5, brutal, severe, shock as a base before you add in the ceaseless. So he is just going to doink pretty much almost anything.
Yeah, and if you kill him, you can pay a CP and go, oh no, he explodes. Everybody within 3 inches is poisoned anyways. If you weren't poisoned now, you are now. And then if you are poisoned, you take another damage. Have fun. It's great. They're very, very what I learned about Plague Marines is they're very much a counterattack and reactionary army rather than I'm gonna take the first strike on you. Like they would rather you deal a bunch of damage to them and then they heal it and then they kill you in the process.
Is there a model then for that strategic level thought that you have to keep in the backline and keep safe? We've already mentioned, the champion sometimes gets sent off to die as bait. Your Plague Marine fighter with his spinny wheel of death can sometimes be a proactive threat once your opponents cluster up a little bit as they get ready to come in. Your Plague Marine generic guy in the background is a good shooter, but is there someone that you have to keep alive to make the whole plan work?
The Playcaster has to be alive. He is the lynch. And if you're going against Plague Marines, like you have to kill the caster because he can point at any visible unit or any visible model within 7 and poison them, or any valid target on the board that he can see. And they're poisoned as an APL, or it can heal 2d6 as an APL to someone or not 2d6, 1d6 within 3 inches as an APL. And then he has a pseudo Meltagun and a Torrent 6-shot weapon in ranged as well. So he's got a lot of stuff. But the big thing is that he can counteract after he poisons you with the point click and do 3 damage immediately to you because you're already poisoned, or he does that in his regular activation. So he can like Jason charged one of my guys, and he had like 3 wounds remaining. No, yeah, it was the Melta-Gunner, and I point and clicked at him, and I killed it because I did 3 damage to it and it had 3 wounds left. It's like super useful for those situations, and it allows them to kind of free up movement and free up damage, especially because you kind of know I can take a shot to the face, so I'm gonna let him overexpose, shoot me, and then I'll let the malignant playcaster come up and heal him, and then shoot the guy back.
Yeah, and the heal on the Nurgle Plaguecaster is pretty amusing because you roll 2 dice, and if you get a 7, or if you get exactly 7, which is Nurgle's holy number, you get to heal 7, which is disgusting when you have a 14 wound model. So that part is really annoying. Otherwise, you get the higher of the d6s. So that is pretty good. It's pretty good. And then the ability to point and click, add poison, and then deal 3 damage later on is also pretty powerful.
Yeah, especially because it's visible within 7, as well. So, like, when I was playing against Harlequins, I was within 7 of them, of their Shadow Seer, and the guy had like 4 wounds left, and he was poisoned. So I just popped it for 3, and he's like, "Well, no, he's concealed." I'm like, "Well, no, you're within 7. I take 3 damage," and then he activated and died. So it's also really good for that. You can basically hope to finish off models that are either within 3 inches of a Marine with plague vents on, or has 4 wounds remaining, and you pop it for 3, and then they die on poison.
Yeah, Plague Marines feel particularly well suited for dealing with all of the 8 and 7 wound models right now because they can take a hit very well, which means your opponents are forced to come in some way, shape, or form. And then once they are in close, you just start double tapping them with Ceaseless or just charging in, dropping the poison. And once they're poisoned, poison vents will do the rest of the work.
Yeah. And ironically, I haven't really seen poison vents do a ton of work. I usually just roll 1s on poison vents, unfortunately. But when I have rolled the 3s, it's when I need the 3s, and it'll kill off a model. So it's super duper nice on the off chance that you get like a 3 or a 2, and you really need those. It might not always work sometimes, but it's super useful when it does.
And I think
Yeah,
when we talked to Orion, he mentioned that the team struggles with some of the attack ops. And I feel like at Adepticon, I heard you say something similar. So how did your plans change from your game with Jason all the way through the end of the tournament? Because you only lost the 1 game against Jason. So I assume there had to be some adaptations.
Yeah, my first game against Jason was Take Ground, right, Jason? I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
We both did Take Ground.
Yeah, we both took Ground. That was funny.
We both just took the opposite strongholds.
Yeah, because in the map, the strongholds were over each other's territory. So you basically just had to hold your side of the stronghold and tug of war with the other guy and hope that you had it. And since we're both Space Marines, we both were like 3 APL and didn't really have to worry about it. But one of the big things was I realized Take Ground's only good if, I'm basing my whole army into just crushing the entire stronghold by itself with like 4 Plague Marines on that side, and then bringing like a small strike force of 2 guys on the other side to try and disrupt enemy lines or slow them down. So I don't usually do that. I usually just do Secure Center. Actually, I did Secure Center for nearly every single one of my games from then. Yeah, every single one of my games after Jason's, I did Secure Center for if you're within 3 inches of the center line, you have more APL in the center line than your opponent, you get a VP. And if you're within 3 inches of the middle of the board, you also get a VP with the same conditions. So I just did that for the rest of my games because I kind of realized, I can just run up to the middle of the board with a light barricade on or a heavy barricade close to the middle and just sit there and wait for them to come to me while I score. And if they don't, they lose.
And this is in contrast to Take Ground, because in Take Ground, your opponent can kind of easily play around the edges of those barricades, or just not interact with you and go around you because you centralize too many of your operatives in one spot. So when you're doing Secure Center line and Secure Center, you can split up your operatives and still play all 3 lanes, right?
Yeah, and it's super duper convenient, especially with Plague Marines, because they don't have the movement to react. Like when you're trying to get out of a building, it's -2 to your move, and so you're moving 2 inches out of the building if you're basing the building. And so you have to really take advantage of the fact that, okay, I need to find a place where I want my guys to sit. And this goes for a lot of 5-inch armies too. Like you got to find a place where you want to sit, and then you sit there and you kind of like tweak movement from then on out. Like most of the times my models only moved 3 or 4 inches uh, to go anywhere other than a charge because I didn't really need them outside of that. They just needed better sight lines on something. And so I'd always have procced lumbering death, so I get ceaseless all the time. So I just kind of like move 3 inches, fire, and then dash, and then leave them alone. So that's kind of how I played them from then on out.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've heard from other Plague Marine players who've been doing okay with them, the only context I have right now is Orion, who I don't actually know if he's playing Plague Marines right now. The last time I talked to him, he was just trying to figure out if he's going to play Gellerpox. But he also said that Secure Centerline ended up being generally a little bit easier just because I think one of our local players who is one of our Patreons, Matt, I don't know if he's been playing Take Ground, if he's been playing Centerline, but I know that he's been having some struggle. So maybe one of those adaptations is let's just play the whole middle of the board. We'll find out places to stage and we'll force you to come to me. And I guess if you're playing Centerline, you can also fight against opposing contains relatively easily because you are already at the midline anyways.
Yeah, actually, I never thought about that. Nobody ever did contain to me. I'm pretty sure everybody thought I'd be rushing them. I played. I think I played 3 Phobos players, so all of them just kind of sat in the back and shot at me the entire game. So there's probably a good reason why they didn't choose contain. God, I hate Phobos.
They're not allowed to play contain anyways.
That's
All they've
true,
got
yeah.
is recon and infiltration.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't like Phobos, so I do not like them. They're just like, oh yeah, so let me throw 4 smoke grenades and then just like shoot you in the face with lethal 5 P1 bullets and you die. I was like, oh wow, that's so convenient.
That was definitely one of the funnier things that happened at Adepticon is that there are so many Phobos players at Adepticon compared to the average player base, from what I can tell, because we did have a new player who was, his first major tournament, and I think somewhere in the 6th game he came up and he's like, I really don't want to play my 5th game against Phobos. And I was like, no, I didn't even realize that there were this many Phobos players in this region, but I guess Jason's been out here whispering sweet nothings about Phobos for so long that it had to have hit someone.
Yeah, because I remember I think we were all sitting around after a game, Jason and a few of us, and Jason was like, there's 14 Phobos players? Like one in every 7 people is a Phobos player. And then there were 7 Plague Marine players and no Inquisition, no Inquisitorial Agent players, or some were 3. But yeah, there's so many Phobos players there. It was kind of crazy.
Phobos hell.
And that's why people always talk about their own local metas, because as much as the internet exists, you still have to know who you're going to be playing against. And maybe some regions are just really into the Phobos.
I mean, Phobos are cool, but they're not 14 players out of 86 cool. Let's be honest, guys.
I do love me some Phobos. I was a little surprised that there was only 2 Legionary there, myself included. I thought they were going to be I thought they were going to be popping.
Were they popping a few tournaments ago? Were they everywhere?
They used to be super overpowered, and then they got nerfed, from the Khorne perspective, just a teeny tiny bit, and then everybody left.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. That's how it be sometimes with meta is the second anything gets nerfed, everybody drops it. Which ironically, that's what I did with the Icon here. I immediately dropped it because I'm like, it got nerfed and I don't like it anymore. No, I mean, from what I know, Legionaries are still pretty good. They're not overpowered. They're just really good now.
Yeah, and they're a very honest team. I mean, I feel like none of the marks have any super crazy tricks. They kind of just hammer you with stats.
Yeah, stat check everywhere. That's such a Plague Marine thing too. Except I don't have Slanesh to just proc a -1 APL or a extra movement or anything. So that's really convenient.
Yeah, the 7-inch move is craziness. Also,
7-inch Plague Marines would be really nice, guys. Let's make it happen.
No, the faction identity is you move slow and you're stinky. We can't change that.
But 7, guys. But 7.
is the
You're right.
7
We actually
operative.
should nerf your dash so that when you combine your 5-inch move and your 2-inch move, you'll have 7 inches. That's what we
No,
need to do.
I already do that when I go through doors. Don't do this to me. No, another thing I learned about was, God, doors suck. They really mess up everybody's day because it's like when I was going through Gallo Dark, I'd be like, I'm going to charge this guy across the hallway. And they're like, nope, no, you don't. You charge 5 inches. I'm like, what do you mean 5 inches? Like, you're going through 2 doors. So screw you. My guy's untouchable. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to move, dash, and flail instead. And that usually works, but I'd really like to get the charge off. So
Yeah, Jason, did you have any similar struggles on Legionaries, or is that extra inch of movement on Legionaries enough where you just like, hey, it's not really?
Yeah, I
an
kind of
issue?
just like zip
It's-
around. But Legionaries are not nearly as like all gas as Angels of Death actually. So you have to lurk a lot more, and you need to like take hostages. And I was like, this feels more like I imagine what playing Nemesis Claw feels like. So it's basically just like if someone that has more models than me expends next to me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to immediately like you run up and throw a crack grenade. My Shrive Talon's got like 5 HP left. That doesn't matter. I charge you and hold you hostage, and if someone else charges, then the Shrive Talon just like kills you. Because he's 4/6 lethal 5 and he fights first.
I don't like the Shrive Talon. I'm gonna be
Shrive
honest.
Talon is so
Talon's kind of
rude.
mean. He's a rude
But-
man. That's why he deserves a flail.
Yep. But yeah, you just like you charge people, you take hostages, and then you start to chew through them.
Yeah, for sure. Didn't the speaking of Adepticon, didn't the guy that won, he was playing Felgor, right? It was the
He was playing
Goatman.
Felgor Ravagers. Yep. Part of Command Point, Shane. I think he's like one of our most visited podcast guests.
Yeah, we've had him on a lot.
Oh wow. Yeah, the Goat Boys are very scary, it seems, because they've got, I just learned about this like a few days ago, like right after the tournament. I was like, wow, that's really good. Because someone was like, oh yeah, well, Felgor, yeah, when they die, they don't actually die. They actually get back up and they start beating the crap out of everyone. I'm like, oh, that seems really good if you got 10 operatives. And they're like, oh yeah, it's great. I'm like, yeah, no, that's really good.
It's true. They were actually probably a little bit more balanced at the end of last edition, and everyone at the moment has been assuming that they would be good in this edition, and no one has really been doing that much until Shane won Adepticon.
Oh no, the GW Nerf Hammer, it's coming for them.
Who knows though?
Yeah.
I feel like in general, Felgor is like kind of mid, and there are like some pretty hard counters out there. Just like no one was really playing them at Adepticon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw his matchups too. He played a bunch of Phobos and then Elysians and then a few others. I don't know if those are, luck is always a factor, and I'm not saying he got lucky. I think I got lucky with my Phobos matchups because I got really lucky with those. But is there any like hard counters into Beastman?
I mean, Legionary is an insanely hard counter because I just bring that same dude we've been talking about, the Shrive Talon, give him a 2-up armor save. He just runs through the lines and like you can't shoot him. So you have to fight him and he fights first and you just can't do anything about it. And he also can fight on death, so he's just gonna like chop through and kill like 5 goats on his way out. It's insane.
Why would you need a
Yeah.
portable barricade when you've got warded armor, guys?
I would also assume that Plague Marines tend to be one of those matchups that you need to have a plan for, just because Felgor live and die by the fact that their weapons are 4 or 5 damage, so their breakpoints against most armies is pretty good. But historically, in the past, they were kept down by Space Marines, just because 14 wounds is a rough breakpoint for 4 or 5 damage. And Nurgle specifically, -1 damage across the board, which means that they're 3-4 damage a fair amount of the time, which does mean they're going to take probably 1 extra attack action to kill you. And because you have the ability to poison, I think when they go frenzied, it doesn't matter if they're poisoned or not, but you can get them down into lethal range very quickly. And frenzy, for as good as it is, does not help you if you die during your activation. So if you end up with 1 damage or 2 wounds left, and then you get poison vented or you poison yourself to death, at the end of that activation, you will fall to the ground dead regardless. So I do feel like it's one of those matchups where I would have been interested to see how it comes down to it, but there weren't that many Plague Marines that made it all the way through because there's a slow team that stances out on the board. Sometimes people can just run around you.
Yeah, plus all of the severe melee, you can just, like, when you frenzy a goat, it takes a critical hit to kill him, and you have just severe on, like, most of your melee, so you can just auto-kill frenzied goats.
Is it shooting as well that they die to a crit?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, they have severe shooting on all of their weapons, because the Plaguecaster is severe on all of his weapons, all the bolt guns have severe, and the blight grenades have severe. So it's like, yeah, you're getting shot, you're always going to get crit on. So yeah, I can see how that'd be actually pretty hard counter to Beastmen. So
yeah, the real question is always how good it actually is, because for all of the metagame discussion around how to beat Felgor, I think one of Shane's opponents, I think in the first day, tried to play cagey, and then Shane just caged off against him and just hit in the back line playing the mission objectives, which meant that the Phobos player had to go in to go kind of start the chain. And let me tell you, if you're playing Phobos and the Felgor player hits your first 3 Marines and kills them because you only have 12 wounds and that breakpoint is not great on 4 or 5 damage, it's going to feel very hard to climb out of the hole, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds pretty nasty, actually.
Yeah, I feel like Phobos into Felgor, you want to just drown them in stun grenades and omni-scramble things, and it's just like you hit them really, really hard on one side, throw a million stun grenades, the ones that make it through unstunned, you omni-scramble, you kill everyone around it so that they can't do any damage to you, and then all of a sudden you've killed like 6 goats and taken no damage back.
But it really is just playing a fully non-committal game with stun grenades until you've picked enough of your opponent's game apart for you to go in and do something else.
I like to think about lore-wise. It's like, the Beastmen are here. Get the flash grenades. And it's just like 30. It's like 3 crates of just flashes, and they're just like chugging them out like over the series of 10 minutes of just shooting their bolters into the dark. It's very funny.
In case of Beastmen, break glass, and inside of the glass there's flash grenades.
Yeah, basically, like they're afraid of the light.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last thing about my Plague Marines is that I never treat them like they're gonna like live through a hit. I know that might be weird. I always treat them a lot more fragile than they are, because I feel like that has always like encouraged me to keep them a little more hidden than what I usually would. Or I'd be about to like charge something and I'd be like, wait, that might not be a good idea. I need to be a lot more careful with this piece, because at the end of the day, it is a roll for what your Plague Marine's damage reduction is. Unless you spend a CP for sickeningly resilient. And I think that being just treating them like a normal Marine instead of saying, oh, they'll never die, I can win every fight. It's probably the best bet for me, at least on my end, to stop me from like full aggro, like killing everything, and then setting myself up for failure because they get shot off the board the next turn.
Except for your bait model. He's there as bait.
Yes, it's the heavy gunner of the champion, and he always runs up, and that is the one time I get to go, go take it, go kill it. If you don't kill it, you got to kill it though. So that's usually killed in the first 2 turning points. And when there was one point where it wasn't, and it was my heavy gunner against Phobos. The guy didn't kill it, and I just went into the back of his board and scored points on, I think it was not loot. It was like intelligence. It was the one where the intel. It's where you do an action and rack up points on an objective. The torrent guy just like sat in the back of a room, closed all the doors, and then racked up like 2 points on intel. And just kind of like didn't do anything else. It was very good. So there's a lot of downsides to not killing the bait piece, but there's a lot of upsides to shooting at something that really needs to die anyways. It's just a trade.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Is there a really, really tough matchup you had, Jason, that wasn't? I'm assuming I was, because you said it was really hard.
Yeah.
But was there anyone else that was like, oh my God, I can't even like figure out how I'm gonna get around this guy?
There wasn't anything that was hopeless. The 2 games I lost, one was Warp Coven, and I was playing for round 4, and we never got there. Basically, I was like, I am going to take Contain, and I hope that he doesn't take Contain. And I was like, if he does, I think I can break it, and if he takes, like, Plant Beacons, I think I'm in a good spot. He chose Plant Beacons, and then we were tied on the crit op, and then he finally had to stage close enough that I was going to be able to just murder him in melee. And so we had like 2 shots fired the entire game, and like no charges, no fights. It was just like staging very carefully for 2 hours, and then the game ended. So I lost that one because I, ran out of time. And it wasn't guaranteed, but it was looking pretty promising that if we played the whole game, that I probably was going to win that one. And in general, I don't think Warp Coven is super duper terrifying for Khorne Legionary, because just the insane damage output in melee is just ludicrous. And plus, like, a melted gun on the back line. The melted gun's got a full-blown chainsword. Like, we're just going to rip and tear, and we don't care that much about Warp Coven. But I think the craziest game of the whole thing was against Hernkin Jaegers. And I can tell that this guy's been playing them for a long time, because Hernkin Jaegers are not as good as this guy played them to be, where he had perfect traps everywhere for stalwart defense. And just like, it was immaculate. All of the positioning, the threat saturation, like knowing when to threaten things. If I would have chosen Take Ground instead of Contain, I could have won. If I could have squeaked out one more kill, I could have won. Like, it was really, really close. I lost by 1 point. But like, it was such a tight game, and it was just like really, really well played, and I was very surprised and amazed. I was kind of like proud of myself for dodging some of the traps where he had people set up for stalwart defense, and I was like, I'm going to throw a smoke grenade at the guy that I'm going to charge, and then I'm going to charge them through a door so that if your stalwart defense shot will be obscured, and then I'm going to kill this guy in melee. And I did that twice, and it worked out amazingly. It just couldn't hang because Hernkin shooting is actually incredibly savage. Like, they've got a bunch of operatives that can potentially one-shot kill in Astartes. It was a very impressive game. It definitely wasn't hopeless. I don't think there's any matchups that are like hopeless for Legionary. And like, all Khorne is pretty much works almost everywhere also.
Yeah, actually, the game after his next game was against me, which is really funny. You and me, and you were like, dude, watch out, this guy's really good. I'm like, what do you mean he's really good? You're like, he beat me, and I'm like, oh no. And we played in Gallowdark, and he was like, oh, this is a horrible map. And it was the Gallowdark map where it's like basically like 2 big long rooms right next to each other. The middle is a big long room, and the right side is a big long room. And so I just like put 2 light barricades and a heavy barricade, and I just sat there the entire game and shot and just like stayed in conceal. And then Cloud of Flies, and he had to walk to me, and he lost by 1 point because he wasn't aggro enough. Because he just couldn't get through whatever he needed to do. But it seems like he was really aggro on you, Jason, where he just like took your side of the board and trapped you pretty well.
He like, Hernkin does have to spend the first like 3/4 of the game setting up traps, and I had to go wade my way through the traps to do everything that I wanted to do. And I did, and it was going pretty well. The thing that got me was, it was one of the missions where you can pick up the objectives. So he picked up the objective and walked it into my board half, and that got him storm objectives. And it was his leader, so I shot and killed him, and then he came back to life with 1 health, and then I couldn't shoot and kill him again. Whereas if he would have actually died, that would have also been like a 2 or 3 point swing. But he did that because he knew that's how it was going to go. And I had a double shot, and I should have spent a CP to try to like re-roll the 1 extra shot, so the first shot would kill him, and then the second shot would take away his 1 HP. Yeah, like I said, there's a bunch of little things that I did wrong, and like with all those opportunities that I missed, that's enough mistakes to lose a game. But yeah, he did not make. He made one mistake, which was he had the double pistol guy try to run up on me, and when he still had another model left to operate, and I counteract and killed him. Whereas if he would have done that at the end, then he would have had a crazy play where you shoot in the strategy phase, and then like I had like
Oh,
a
I hate
couple
that
different
guy.
2 HP guys that were like standing around there that he definitely would have killed. But I got lucky and I killed him on the counteract. So that was like the only thing that was a mistake there. But otherwise, it was a super tight game. I made like a few mistakes, and he had a very well deserved win.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really good at staging. His big mistake against me was that he just didn't put it. He didn't bring a heavy barricade. Instead, he brought, I think, he brought something. I think he brought the armor that allowed him to get torrent and blast resistance instead. And he was like, "Yeah, that's the thing that lost me a game," because he basically had the middle of the board completely open on his side, and I just shot him, or I guard. I had my warrior on the other side of the building guarding the entire game. He never moved from there, and I had Lumbering get the entire game on, and I just kind of waited. And he never left the middle of the. He never got into the middle of the board outside of a few times, and at the end of the game. But yeah, it was close. Um, for Adepticon, a few of the reveals. Are you guys excited about the what is it? Raveners and the Servitors?
I think they both look pretty fun.
Four
Yeah,
four man elite kill team's kind of crazy.
5-man.
Or five, yeah.
Yeah, I am kind of curious to see what they both look like. I have liked Hunter Clade in the past, so I'm curious what they come up with for the AdMech. But it seems Jason's going to take that half of the box, the Raveners, just because it's more in vogue for Jason.
It's the vibe. Of all of the releases we've seen for Kill Team, Goremongers are like the most up my alley. It's just like World Leaders plus Phobos. So it's gonna be tough to pry me off of Goremongers. But the Raveners do look really cool, and like a 5 model super elite team seems ultra vibes. And one of the hobby things I've been working on was actually making a Tyranid NPO kill team, so that I can throw it in the bag, and when I go to a kill team night, if I run into a new player, I'm gonna just play an NPO team. And instead of doing like the NPO missions, the way that I like to teach new players is I just play NPO against the other person, and then I don't have any ploys, I don't have any command points, and I will I don't have attack op, but I'll play the crit op and the kill op, and I'll just like play as hard as I can, but with these like terrible stat lines. The other person's gonna win probably, and like I'm gonna be like, oh, think about this ploy, like use your equipment now, and like remind them of all the things that they're trying to do, but otherwise try to play a pretty full game. And I've got a set of Tyranids for that, and I came up with a paint scheme that I really like, and I think it'll look sick on the Raveners.
Yeah, I might pick up the Raveners and just like paint the heck out of them, because I mean, Jason and Travis saw I painted my Plague Marines quite well. I
Yeah.
really want to
Yeah,
just
they were
like
very
go.
pretty.
Yeah, I want to go all out on these guys. Like five. So my wondering is if it's going to be 5 models that you could put in the team, or is it going to be like 8 models and you choose of the 5, or if it's just going to be a five model
It'll
thing
probably
like
have a
the
couple
blind.
specialists, and and they've already shown that there's a warrior, so there's 5 specialists plus a warrior type. So I suspect it'll be kind of the same design that we've been seeing, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it. There's a lot of cool stuff that got shown off at Adepticon, but I'm kind of curious. Adepticon was your first major tournament. What other tournaments are you thinking about going to? And do you have any like local game store, local community that you're playing with right now that you wanted to shout out?
So for the things I'm wondering about going to, I'm debating on going to the U.S. Open Canada, because there's only like 23 people in that tournament right now, and it's in like 2 months, literally like 2 months from now. And I was like, if it stays at like 20 or 30 people, I might just join and hope that it's like a bunch of people and then like 3 really good people, but like 27 really like people that know what they're doing but aren't like top of the leaderboards, and just like try to like snatch a golden ticket from there. Um,
That would make you the second American to go to Canada to try to steal a ticket. So if you do go there and you do win, you'll be in the long tradition of U.S. players going to Canada to try to steal a ticket.
Leave it to the Americans to go to other countries and steal their stuff.
To be fair, last year, we had a Canadian player come to the New York Open and steal a ticket back from New York after the first year where we did that. So, it was all fair game. So I guess this year it'll be you, Cooper. Good luck.
Yeah. And then a few of the game stores I go to, and one of the big ones is I live in Arkansas, which is quite a ways from where Adepticon was. But I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and just around here, I think it's in Springdale, there's a place called Games Explosion, and it's the craziest game store you'll ever see. If you're in the Fayetteville area or in the Arkansas area, I totally recommend you give it a look. They don't have an online webpage because they like to make sure that they've got a really large stock of everything and that online people don't just like steal all their stuff. So I give that a check out. The game store is called Games Explosion. It's awesome. They've got like BattleTech, they've got AOS, 40K, Kill Team, all the new releases. They've got tons of boxes for it, so you won't have to worry about like fear of missing out. You'll get a box no matter what. It's great. I'd totally recommend checking that place out. So.
Nice. Do you have a local group that you've been playing with that you want to give a shout out to, or is it mostly at this store?
It's actually mostly at the store. I just kind of they have a little tiny Discord for Northwest Arkansas people, and they just go, "Hey, who's down to play?" And I'll play. Though it's not as active right now, so I've been kind of farming some games on Tabletop Simulator, trying to get some better experience with more people around the world.
Nice. It's always a nice little spot. We've got plenty of tournaments coming up all the way around the U.S., so hopefully you get a couple more in Arkansas. And anything else you want to give a shout out to before we split from talking about Adepticon, Plague Marines, and being stinky in the middle of the board?
Not really. No, not at all. So thank you guys for giving me the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And as always, thank you, listeners.